Hi, guys. Welcome back to the Deciding Factor podcast. I'm John.
And I'm Alton.
And Barb's with us today, as well as a special guest, Gary, will be joining us. And I've got to say, this was a really good podcast today. We went a little long, but I think it's going to be thoroughly worth it. Today, we're going to talk about should civilians own assault rifles. And it just happened to work out perfect because Alton's president came out and spoke to us today about this issue. And we actually go over that in the podcast. And, you know, Alton,
amendment is absolute. I think that's what he said.
So Alton's been triggered all day. So you can see his frustration through the whole episode. And we even learn a few things about, what is it? Boogaloo boys. Yeah. We learn about that. What else do we learn, Alton?
Yeah, I'm pretty not too happy with old Biden's big gun control push. So I'm pretty much rant the whole time. So if you want to hear me shout and throw a big temper tantrum about governments and guns and history, you're in for a treat.
Now, who should they share this with? Would you say?
They should definitely share this with the people who don't like guns. I doubt that they're going to tolerate an hour of me singing, but I think there's some good nuggets in there that maybe they haven't considered before. So,
yeah.
An hour. I thought it was only like 17 minutes, right? Normally 15, just roughly
17 and a half, something like that.
But the real highlight is that we learned the sound of an assault rifle.
Pew, pew, pew.
All right. So y'all make sure you follow us on social media. Make sure if you are listening to our podcast and that is all you're doing, you are missing out because there is a lot going on in our screens. So make sure at some point you check out our YouTube channel so you can see all of our lovely faces, and make sure you comment on our eye candy, aka Alton.
Or just talk trash. That's cool too.
Yes. I would love to hear what y'all have to say about what Alton says on our show today, as well as Gary. So guys, please stay tuned because this is the deciding factor.
Everyday life issues broken down to help you build your own opinions on the issues that matter most. Coming to you from Austin, Texas, this is The Deciding Factor with your host, Alton Hill and John Herzog.
All right, we're back. So like we said, it's going to be should civilians own assault rifles? Barb, can you intro our guest for us?
I can. Today we have Gary Phipps with us. He is a husband, a father of three, a former combat paratrooper, a current marketing manager, and an avid gun rights and liberty advocate. He spends his free time appearing on other podcasts. Can you believe that people do other podcasts beside this one?
No.
As a social commentator, as well as prepping in an attempt to become more self-sufficient overall. Gary, welcome aboard.
Hey, thank you for having me, guys.
Oh, yeah. So you were former military.
Yes.
And what exactly did you do there?
Well, I was a scout for the majority of my time, which is a Cav Scout or 19 Delta, basically reconnaissance. I was airborne pretty much my entire career. So jumped out of airplanes quite a lot. And being in the 82nd, I always like to call it modern day Sparta, because really that's what it is. The whole like mindset there is real crazy. So, yeah, I was there for about 8 years, and then I became a recruiter. The Army told me I had to. So
did they do like the Sparta kick and just like kick you out of the plane?
Sometimes
cool.
Sometimes that does happen. Actually, there's videos. You YouTube it.
So I'm going to go back to our extra segment we had. We asked about should everybody go to the military. So I guess the military determined that you weren't suited to be in the military, so they sent you out to recruiting until you got sick and left.
Not quite. However, basically to be an Army recruiter, you got to have a clean record. So you can't have any felonies, nothing wrong. So if you're squeaky clean, chances are, no matter what you do in the military, you're going to get sent to either drill sergeant or recruiting school. And I didn't want to go because I liked jumping out of airplanes and shooting machine guns, blowing stuff up, but they decided otherwise.
Wow.
You didn't think about just committing a crime so that you could avoid it?
A couple times, I'm not going to lie.
Knock over a 7-Eleven or something?
Yeah.
I stole from my mom when I was a kid. Doesn't that count? So you're doing marketing now is what you do?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And what exactly are you doing for that marketing firm?
I work for a mid-sized trucking company with like probably a couple thousand employees, about 10 locations across the Midwest. And I run everything marketing for them. I do digital, traditional billboards, all that stuff. So it keeps me busy, but that's just my day job.
Nice.
So if you're just listening to the podcast, Gary here has worn his Hawaiian shirt. So I'm going to accuse him of being a Boogaloo boy. How do you respond to that?
What?
What's a Boogaloo boy? That's
yeah. What is that? Is that like
that's
Proud
the
Boys?
question. No, I will say without being ignorant to it. No, I used to affiliate, and I got into that scene a bit more so on the liberty side of things. I'm a libertarian, and so I liked a lot of what they represented. Now they started catching a lot of bad flack on the news. Because of a few members or people that claim to be a part of it, did some stuff. And then all of a sudden they get painted like a racist organization or something, when in reality, they're very they're mainly libertarian. Libertarians, super anti-racist. And so I was like, well, go ahead.
I have to jump you back because you say Boogaloo Boy, and I'm like, Bugle Boy. That was a brand in the 90s, right? What are we talking about? I don't know what we're talking about.
So the term Boogaloo refers to a movie back in the day called The Electric Boogaloo 2, and it was a dance movie. And for whatever reason, the term Boogaloo was actually used by CIA and FBI guys back in the 70s and 60s as a form of overthrowing a government. So like they'd be like, oh, Cuba's about to do a Boogaloo. That's what Boogaloo stands for, and that's where the name kind of came from.
Okay. Oh, I get it. So you're talking like Idaho.
What?
Yeah, totally.
like the guys out there that are like compounds and militia.
No, kind of. They're not like the 3%ers. They're not like the Proud Boys, because they actually have an organization. There's like a president, there's chapters and all that kind of stuff.
Like
Boogaloo is decentralized.
So like,
No,
I
just
think with
Bitcoin. Watch out.
Okay. All right. Sorry. I'll back off. I understand now.
But to be in the Boogaloo Boys, you have to wear a Hawaiian shirt, right? It's got to be a requirement.
What's funny about that is I wore these before just because they just kind of fit me better. And I got a couple different versions of them that I've had for years, but yeah, I caught on.
Sweet.
Sidetrack. So let's.
It's not sidetracked, man. It's very much about freedom and a well-regulated militia, which is exactly what we're talking about. Come on.
I got talking points on that too. I mean, the whole Second Amendment can be interpreted a number of different ways, and I can go down that rabbit hole if you want.
Okay. So let's step back a second. So should civilians own assault rifles? A lot of people get mixed up when it comes to the true definition of what an assault rifle is. I know I have an AR-15, so it's not an assault rifle. It's a semi-automatic weapon. So
yes,
define exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a public difference in terminology, I guess, with the media and the news. Assault rifle obviously sounds scary. I mean, my rifle's never assaulted anybody, and also it doesn't fire fully automatic. It doesn't fire semi-automatic. It's single shot burst. And it actually performs really similarly to a lot of hunting guns that people don't deem military style. It just looks scary because the ARs have a collapsible buttstock, or they have a pistol grip, or maybe some flashy lights and stuff on it. There's way more powerful rifles out there that can do so much more damage. But people like to say, oh, well, ARs are used in mass shootings more than anything else. They're not, actually. Handguns kill way more people in all shooting instances. I mean, ARs are rarely used. They're just used in the ones that make the headlines.
Yeah.
But they look scary.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's
saying.
anything scary if you don't know how to use it or how it operates, which is why most of these people that are scared of these guns never really shot one or held one or owned one or cleaned one or taken one apart or really understood how the mechanisms of it works. And once you do, it's way less scary to you.
What about the, what was it, 2 or 3 years ago, bump stocks was big and popular on the news. Those still don't make your weapon an automatic weapon. How close does it get?
I've shot my father-in-law's. He had one before he passed away down in Florida. And
did you hear that different?
I
I shot my grandpa with.
Yeah, but it was fun. It was fun. It was the first time I ever shot one, and I had fired automatic rifles before in the military. It is similar. The bump stocks are similar. They make it so your finger pushes the trigger fast based off the recoil of the gun. That's all it does. It's not fully automatic, and it actually doesn't shoot smooth most of the time. You really got to hold it perfect for it to fire at that rate of fire that you're wanting it to. Me, if I was in a combat situation, that would be the last thing I wanted. I'd want to be able to control what I'm hitting and what I'm shooting at. So the argument that those are super dangerous is kind of ridiculous in my opinion.
And if I'm not mistaken, AR-15s, their distance is not really that great.
Yeah, for the most part. It depends on, what caliber you get it in. I mean, I guess technically an AR-15 is a 5.56 or a .223, but you can get different loads for different distances that you're shooting at. Depends on the site. But really the main scary part about the AR is the high capacity magazines that it does give you. I mean, honestly, if you're going to defend your home or defend an area, or if you're defending your unit, if you're in the military, wouldn't you want the thing that held the most bullets and fired the fastest? It's going to be the most effective. And that's really where a lot of the argument comes from as far as a lot of liberty, Second Amendment people is why limit me to what I can protect my family with?
Yeah. So I guess when it comes down to it, I think we talked about guns in the past, and, it really comes down to the person that owns the gun is really what seems to be the biggest issue. It doesn't matter what type of weapon. It seems to be just the mentality of the person controlling it.
Oh, yeah.
So, you talked about some of these hunting rifles are probably more dangerous. If someone had a 50 caliber and was shooting that on top of the UT tower instead of the hunting rifle that he used back in the day, we'd have seen a little different story, right?
Most likely, depending on the shot. I mean, that's another nuanced topic too that people like to gloss over. It depends on the skill of the shooter. Yeah, 50 cal can be more devastating, but if you're more maybe not as experienced, an AR or a regular hunting style rifle might be better for you to transition targets quicker. So really, it's about a skill level thing. Also, like you were saying, it's for sure a mental health thing. It's a mental health thing way before anything else. Yeah, I've always said the decision to kill comes before the choice of the weapon. And that mentality is going to be in that person's head no matter what. You see people use cars, you see people use knives, you see people use guns. They're going to do it any way they can. And unfortunately, sometimes a gun is the best option for them because it is effective. But also, those guns protect me from people like that. So why wouldn't I want one?
Yeah, this is true. So the question of should civilians own assault rifles? Where do you stand? And why?
Well, I believe in the Second Amendment and I believe in the Constitution. I know it's already been bastardized a ton already. And I used to be way more patriotic, I guess, technically about the Constitution itself. But at the end of the day, it is just a piece of paper. It is a piece of paper that represents his promises that are not necessarily upheld on the government's end often. And with that being said, I think people should be able to own these weapons out of a human, I guess, God-given right to protect yourself and your family, regardless of what anybody else says. I mean, killing somebody is already illegal. So what should it matter what I own? I mean, my weapons aren't killing anybody. Criminals are still going to do it. If these guns are banned across the board, we now have 400 million guns in the US. Hey, there's no feasible way to get rid of them. And the criminals aren't going to give them up. They're not going to turn them into a gun buyback program. I mean, and if they want to get one, I know black market ways myself. I'm technically a law-abiding citizen. I know people who run guns, and I'm not doing that. I just know they exist. And if I'm not actively searching these people out and they're just finding me, do you think criminals can't? I mean, if gun laws aren't working in Chicago, how are they going to work anywhere else?
True.
So can I ask you really just a practical question? I'm with you on the Constitution, with you on it should be legal. This is coming from someone, I don't own a gun, but I don't have a problem with people owning a gun. So let's suppose that we shift the boogaloo part of the conversation out, because I could see some arguments against overthrowing the government. I mean, it's tempting. I get that. But
and I'm not advocating for that anyway. Also.
You got that. Yeah, we'll make that clear. Disclaimers all around. But I guess what I'm wondering is, okay, if this comes down to protecting my home, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like someone's going to come break in, someone's going to try and attack. Why is an assault rifle the thing I want? It sounds like more damage is done with handguns. Why are we talking about this? Why is this the thing that people want? So
this is what, I mean, and not being rude to you, but if somebody was to ask me, and I've heard this question asked, why do you need an AR-15 is what you hear a lot. And I always say, well, what is it any of your business, what I own?
Well, because you came on the podcast, so it became my business.
Public knowledge.
Yeah, sorry.
So I would say that, but yeah, to answer your question, it goes down to skill level again. So I've had a ton of training on AR platform style rifles. I'm very accurate with them, very comfortable with it, and I know them very well. So to me, that's going to be my go-to weapon. Not only is it a higher caliber than a pistol, but I can be more accurate with it. It's got a flashlight and all kinds of stuff that I can use if it's dark out. That blinds whoever is assaulting you, maybe. So it's down to preference,
Okay, but again, strictly practical, not talking legal.
Yeah.
Joe Meth Head is at your door or window, however they get in, and you're saying that you can access an assault rifle faster than you could access a handgun?
Depends on where you keep them.
Let's assume your waistband. That's what I'm thinking. I guess I'm thinking someone that I rented a room from, and I won't get into details, but someone that I hugely respect. Okay, like that. He actually, I loved being out in public with him because I knew that he was always packing. He had it there, and nobody ever knew unless you talk to him privately. But I always thought, okay, if we are in church and we have a shooter come into church, he'll be the guy that can actually stop it, right?
Yes.
When I picture this with I think I don't totally understand the beef about assault rifles, not from a legal standpoint, but wow, that seems impractical. I don't get why this is supposed to convince me that I'm going to protect people better. You know what I mean? So men don't carry purses. What are you going to do?
So in that situation with the crackhead, I got my pistol right here. I keep it with me all the time. It's always in my waistband. If I'm out and about, it's in my car. If I go into a place where I'm not supposed to have a gun, blah, blah, blah. I think that's dangerous to have laws like that. But also the purpose of having an AR isn't for crackheads. It's not even for thugs that try to rob your house. This is rifle style, like AR and bigger ones, AKs, stuff like that. That's meant to maintain independence from foreign forces, large groups of people, and to include your own government if that should ever happen. And which is why the Second Amendment was made in the first place. Okay.
So Black Lives Matter rioters are down my street. Is that when I'm supposed to have it?
Are they assaulting you?
Well, they assaulted. Okay, I live in the Seattle area, right? So they did a huge amount of damage to downtown. A whole bunch of businesses were broken into, robbed. It was a mess. I think it would count as being under attack.
Yeah. Okay.
That said, it strikes me just in my mind, and maybe because I'm not a gun owner, like a bad idea to take an assault rifle down to downtown Seattle, even though legitimately they were doing huge amounts of damage. Private property laws. They kicked out the police. It was a mess. If there was a time that it was justified, that was probably it. Is that what you're saying?
That's one scenario. If I was a business owner on that road and my whole life had been put into that, I had gotten that business from my dad who worked his whole life off for, and people are trying to burn it and loot from it. I'm going to get my family. Everybody's going to have a gun. We're going to be waiting in the main entrance. And I'm going to say, hey, you guys can't come in here. Sorry. And I'm not going to escalate force. Now, that's up for you to decide. If you feel like your life is being threatened, I would absolutely want to have the highest caliber weapon because you don't know if they're going to have an AK-47. So why not meet fire with fire. It doesn't mean you got to use it. One big plus of having a weapon like an AR, an AK, big firepower is deterrence. So you don't even have to use it. Just having it, maybe having it slung across you, showing, hey, I will use this to defend my property, which is my right. And I mean, if you want to push that, then go ahead. And that's why the deterrence is important.
And I think too, we saw that recently in the COVID-19 shutdowns where, I mean, look, if there's a mob of people, a handgun, a pistol, a Glock, a 6-shot revolver, it's not going to be the same deterrent as, an AR-15 slung around your person not being brandished. And I'm not sure if it was Dallas or some other place, but basically there was just some citizens that had AR-15, AR platform stuff standing in front of a barber shop, and the barber sitting there cutting hair. And I don't know, there's like maybe 10 of them standing there with rifles. And then the cops or the health department or whoever's trying to say, COVID-19, don't cut hair. People, they're like, you're on private property. We're asking you to leave. And there's the cops or whoever it was so outgunned. It was like, okay, we're just going to let them cut hair. And so
why not?
In my own opinion, I think that is a great example of like flip that around, and civilians, citizens of this nation, the free people, should not. There is no reason in my head, I don't care how bad of a pandemic is, that anyone has the right to tell me I can't cut somebody's hair. And if it takes me to sling an AR-15 over my shoulder to remind you that you're overstepping, then I think that's a great way.
Yeah. And that's one reason I'm saying that, the Second Amendment was written so a standing military force or a large, heavily armed police force can't force you to do things that are, whether or not they say it's against your rights or not. I feel like us as citizens have a pretty good idea of if our rights are being violated, and being forced to not earn a living for your family and your livelihood. I mean, that's going against your rights, which that group that was in Texas, that was Boogaloo. They were there. And she even said, the business owner said, hey, I'm glad they're here. And she's like, and other businesses were saying like, hey, where can we contact these guys to keep cops from shutting us down? Because we just want to live our lives, and that's what the Boogaloo is about.
Okay. So devil's advocate here though, with the COVID pandemic, I mean, I totally agree. This is rights ripped out from under us. It's still happening all over the place. But what I'm hearing more than anything, I'm not hearing as many cases of storm of police coming to the door and saying, you got to leave. It's the bureaucratic side. People are getting fined to the point where they can't. So tell me how this fits. In the world we live in now, you almost don't need to have your government show up at your door with a gun, because they can show up to the IRS and take everything from you. So are we saying that this is still the answer to protecting private citizens?
So
the real threat.
Let's say the government ramped that up. Let's say, look at DC right now. Does DC not look like an over-militarized lockdown fort? The reason why they are is because we own guns like AR-15s. Honestly, I think they're slowly getting to the point, because they're surrounding the place with armed military service member, which I guarantee you, most of them don't want to be there. They're only there because they probably think it's bullshit. I used to be them, and most of the military isn't down for that sort of thing. And they're not down to tread on their own civilians' rights. What they do in Iraq, that's one thing I don't agree with. I went there twice, and I don't agree with everything that happened down there. But to do it on your own home soil is one thing. But that's why people were storming the Capitol. I don't think, it was a lot of MAGA idiots and stuff like that. I'm not all on board with any of that. But governments have been overthrown for way less. Let's be honest. It's happened throughout history.
And just to talk about,
if you had a government that actually put their foot down, I think we would see a different story. There is way too much. Let's just hold off. Like the Capitol, when it was being attacked, or the Black Lives Matter for the last year, if they would have actually been more aggressive, I don't know if firing is really the level I want to get to, but if they would have done more aggressive maneuvers and shown that you're not going to F around with our city, our state, none of that, you wouldn't see as much of this crap going on. I guarantee over in other countries, there's videos of the cops walking down the street. Some idiot acts like he wants to do something. He gets beat up by every cop within, 5-10 feet of him. So you do that here, all those little snowflakes are going to start shutting up.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that I know a lot of people, they're afraid of these assault rifles and, and so they're like, military bad, ban them. Okay. But then literally it was just the other day that we're talking about Washington, DC. Some guy, the way I understand it, murdered a police officer by driving his car into, the cops that were standing there and then getting out and stabbing people. So, of course you can make the argument, well, but what if he had a rifle? Well, it's legal. He could have, and if it was illegal, guess what? He could have. But those types of things, I think, don't get nearly politicized the way something, if anyone is using a gun, it's just like blown up. But he was just using a knife. That's not a big deal because it's not political.
Ultimately, he got shot.
Yeah. I believe he got shot.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So, well
deserved.
If he had an assault rifle,
absolutely.
Guess what? He'll get shot just as well. It just might happen a lot quicker because with a knife, you need to be within range to actually stab somebody, right? Then you can really turn it up. Of course, even then, that goes back to the argument. Cops are too scared to do what they need to do to protect themselves and others because of all the lawsuits that can follow it. And it's bullcrap, to be honest with you.
Yeah. In Iraq, we had a thing called escalation of force. And if a bad guy was coming up, it was up to us to use our smallest caliber, work our way up. There was a whole hierarchy of rules. I don't know if you've ever had a vehicle-borne IED barreling at you. You don't have enough time to go through this checklist of things. Now, if you jump straight to your highest caliber and you shoot them and it turns out, they just didn't see the convoy and you just killed a woman and her kid, then it's your ass. But if you don't do it in time and it blows up and then kills you and all your buddies. So I understand that dilemma that cops do go through, but I also think things like qualified immunity is bullshit. They need to be held responsible if they're going to be out on our streets. This place isn't a war zone. This is our own homeland. It can seem like a war zone at a time. I get that, but it's not,
Yeah. So let's dive into the nitty gritty part of this. I know ALTON is, he said it before on our show. If the Army has a tank, he should have a tank in his front yard. He's pretty extreme when it comes to that. I'm not going to say I'm that extreme. I do believe in gun rights. It sounds like you're pretty big on gun rights as well and being able to carry whatever.
Yes.
So let's look at some of the statistics. These people want to stop allowing you to have assault rifles, or really what it sounds like is they don't want you to have semi-automatic rifles either. But when you look at the statistics, the U.S. Department of Justice actually has it listed as 60% of all gun deaths are suicides. 60%. That means only 40% are actually homicides.
Yeah, let me preface my answer with this. I'm not a huge fan of these statistics, and not because they don't match my narrative. I really don't care if they're pro me or not, because let's bring it to COVID, for instance. You'll have one person preaching statistics to you from their source, but your numbers aren't going to match theirs. The same thing happens with gun statistics. You can say, the government's telling me this, but what they don't account for is they'll be like, in court, they'll say, this person was shot 8 times. Actually, they were only shot 4 times. They also count the exit wounds. Or they'll say, guns kill so many people a year. They don't say that guns successfully protect other people's lives by killing the people that deserve to be killed, like somebody who's assaulting them or trying to rape them or something like that. So those statistics get lumped in, and I get to a point where I don't even argue them anymore. I more argue just the core basis of why it's important. And it's up to you to believe whatever statistics you want. I don't know them. I don't choose to dig into it because they change so often.
So my challenge is going to be for both of y'all too. Why would anyone, if we have semi-automatics, why would anyone really need an automatic assault rifle? Do we really need to allow anyone to have that?
I don't see a problem with it. For one, owning a fully automatic weapon, to get one even illegally, is very expensive. If you have that kind of money to own that kind of weapon, and also especially if you do it legally, you got to get the tax stamps, you have to go through the proper channels, all that stuff. What do you think the probabilities are of that person being irresponsible or reckless with that automatic rifle? Most people that I know that own silencers, automatic weapons, big machine guns, they are so they have a pattern of everything they do. They do it the right way. They're safely travel it. They ensure it's clear all the time. When they shoot, nobody's around. They make sure everybody's safe. They're very knowledgeable. So going back to, Alton's thing, own a tank. If you can afford it, the chances are you're probably responsible enough to operate it and keep it without killing anybody that you're not supposed to.
I feel like Hollywood disproves you.
Yeah, Hollywood does a lot of things.
Plenty of people have the money to do stuff that it's ridiculous. So I would
say, do you know who Dan Blazarian is? Dan Blazarian? So he's like the Instagram Playboy king. He used to be a Navy SEAL guy, got out, made a ton of money playing poker. Now he owns.
That's a thing. There's an Instagram. What is an Instagram Playboy?
So that's the nickname he goes by. If you look him up, yeah. If you look him up, you'll be really surprised by his lifestyle. He's basically Grand Theft Auto in real life. Anyway, this guy owns shit like tanks. He owns tanks. He owns machine guns. He owns everything you can think of. He hasn't killed anybody that I know of. I mean,
that's the point, though. He's got the money to hide it. I mean, you and I go kill someone, we're gonna bury him in the backyard. But you've got that much money, you can drop him off it. The point is, okay. I think I'm not totally.
It's the wrong question.
It's the wrong question.
Maybe.
Wrong question. I don't care if you think I need it or not.
It's not a need thing, though. It's not a need.
Come and take it.
But we're talking what? If we're going to talk legislation, which I assume we're talking allow. Should all Americans have access to military weapons? What's the point in having a military if they do? Or is there a point? And that's my question. Are we saying we just shouldn't have a military? We should just let people?
I would say military used in the right way to protect our own borders and our legitimate interests, not like oil overseas or loaning our own troops out to other countries for back deals, which happens often. If they're used to protect the borders from foreign invaders, yeah, absolutely. I think a military is needed. However, civilian gun ownership is needed in case a tyrannical government does take place and controls that military that is in place. So, you as a civilian, would you rather give up? You'd just be like, you know what? I'm not even going to own a fire extinguisher anymore. There's already a fire department. Why would I own a fire extinguisher? Am I paranoid that a fire is going to happen because I own a fire extinguisher? That same thought process applies to guns as well.
All right. We'll give you a point there. We'll give you a full point there.
Well, you're assuming I keep a fire extinguisher. I don't know. But what I'm hearing, I look at what's happening. I think that what's happening in our government today is tyrannical. Should I be taking an assault rifle to the governor's mansion? I feel like there's some moral issues you could say about that, but we're talking.
Yeah.
I
get what you're saying.
How do you determine when it is legitimate enough that it's the people need to rise up? I see people are dying from not being allowed to go to work. We've got older people that are trapped in their nursing homes. There's all kinds of stuff that I can look at. What's the church in Canada right now? It's going to happen in the States too. That's got fenced in and everything. Okay, so when do I say the time has come? I'm taking down the health department.
So nobody wants to do that, right? But if you look at our history, what happened, right? There was so much tension around taxes, right? You had the Boston Tea Party, trying to send a message, but no one started fighting until
the shot heard around the world.
So
and it's going to take one instance like that. A lot of people thought that instance might have been the Capitol riots and a lot of other small instances like Kenosha, Wisconsin. I follow a lot of groups of people that have these conversations regularly. Some people, you might be like, oh, that Gary guy is a crazy gun nut. There's people that are 20 times more crazier than me, that they will be the ones to make the first move. which will then show everybody else, okay, hey, maybe it's time to do that. But I mean, that it's going to be random, I think.
The beautiful thing is that we live in a wonderful country that offers us so much that having never been to like war or anything before, I don't know anything about that, but certainly would never want to do that. And so I think that it's wise and prudent. I mean, if you've listened to this podcast at all, you know that I'm like never on board with anything that the government's doing ever. And it's just steadily getting worse. But you know what? I'm sitting here in my nice house, enjoying my coffee, having a podcast. It's just not that bad yet. As much as I'd like to whine and complain. I was talking to somebody, we talked about the cops, you know, in Mexico, this guy was telling me that they are guilty until proven innocent. So he was telling me that literally like the cops can get killed by criminals and the other cops will watch because they don't want to sit in jail for a year until they prove their own innocence. So anyway, we have it really good, but the government does not give us our rights. And if you believe at all about what our founding fathers did in the Second Amendment, I think most people haven't even read the Second Amendment. They don't even know what it means. They just think guns are bad. And so we need to take them away. And they haven't really. One thing that I do want to mention is like, I don't know if this statistic is real. I saw it on the internet. It's probably real. 100%. It said it's a jiu-jitsu guy that's always talking trash. So don't fact check me on this. Just go with a thought experiment. He said every person or 1 in 4 people will experience some amount of violence during their lifetime, right? So they're getting attacked, robbed, I don't know, beat up on a playground or something. And then the other 75% don't, right? But if you're that 1 in 4, would you like to be prepared for that scenario? And I think when we talk about this question today, should civilians have the right to own? I think that we do fall into that category of there's a large percentage of the population that has never experienced violence. They've never studied history and what governments do. And so they're just kind of like living in this la la land, like, oh, these right-wing psychos, they are so crazy, gun bad, but they haven't actually, you know, had somebody pistol whip him in the face or, you know, or they weren't in the place where the mobs were rioting down the street and they don't have that fear because they've never been a part of it. But let's go ask the woman who was mugged and raped. Does she carry a gun now? You know?
Yeah.
It changes how you
I've
look at things.
always said gun rights are women's rights. I mean, who is some politician that is surrounded by guards to tell a woman that she can or cannot carry the weapon that she chooses to protect herself in a dark parking garage, you know, when she gets off work? That's not my place. I don't think it should be theirs either.
So sorry,
go ahead.
So
I'm sure we're on time with 15 minutes, right?
Yeah, we're definitely on time.
Coming up on 14 probably.
So
I told y'all, man.
You're a little worked up. Hey, so what about the fact that, okay, we want to get these rights, according to y'all. What are we willing to do to, say, meet in the middle? I already know Alton's answer. He doesn't give a crap about meeting in the middle.
See y'all.
But what can we do? Because, you know, you just had, I was going to call him the vice president, the current president, Biden, who is talking about red flag gun laws that they want to implement, and a few other things. I got to say, one of the things that I read was homemade rifles or guns in general.
Ghost guns. Yeah.
50 round clips.
You know, I think we can all get on board and say, I don't want a gun out there that's not registered in some form or fashion. So really,
Why not?
wow, this is
I'm just saying,
intense.
like,
Quit infringing on my rights.
Yeah, I assume that we're not supposed to
man.
register our cars either. Sheesh. No.
Agreed.
I'm against that as
Agreed.
well.
Yeah, I figured. No, I wasn't being funny. I was being totally serious. Here's the thing.
Oh, this
Okay, you're
is
asking like,
intense.
what's the middle ground between the gun rights and the gun control? I don't think there is one.
Well, how about this as an answer? We're already at the middle ground. So the Second Amendment says shall not be infringed. However, we have so much infringement already. Chicago being one of the strictest gun law cities in the country. You can't own anything or whatever. And yet one of the highest gun violent cities there is. So if gun laws can't work there, why would they work anywhere else? Also, there's already background checks. There's already waiting periods. There's all these gun control measures that currently exist. Why do we think stacking more on is going to stop criminals from doing what they're doing? Because shouldn't the ones that exist already do that?
I get your point.
Shall
but-
not be infringed.
Exactly.
Shall not be infringed.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. The red flag gun law needs to be thrown out immediately. Like, if one of my friends or family or anybody that knows me decides, hey, we think he's psychotic on his podcast, let's go tell the judge. Now it's up
Yes.
for me to provide my sanity. I mean,
Yeah.
Barb had the question on one of our extras. How do you prove that you're sane when you're in the insane asylum?
Yeah.
Tricky.
What do you do?
Well, that's not innocent until proven guilty. That's them assuming you're guilty, and then hopefully maybe you'll be proven innocent. And that's not due process. That's not just. I mean, a warrant should be attained if anybody's going to be soft knocked or hard knocked or whatever they call it by a SWAT team because they think you have weapons. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with Duncan Lemp by chance in Potomac, Maryland. I think it was 2019. He was killed in his sleep by ATF agents because on Instagram he had posted some guns that he had that were a little shorter than what they allowed. So they deemed that he was a threat. They went online, seen that he made a website. And he was publicly very anti-government, like a lot of punks are. You know, a lot of people are anti-government. They killed him in his sleep by shooting him through a window in his bed next to his girlfriend. And that should never be allowed. That the police won't release the body cam footage of it because they know it's wrong. And they know when they do, it's probably going to cause hell on the streets. And those red flag laws are just going to magnify that. Not only is it going to get civilians killed, it's going to get cops killed. Because if you think that, I mean, crazy gun nuts are going to just say, oh yeah, I've been stockpiling these guns just to give them away when somebody forces me to, you're insane. You know, that's why they have them, is for tyrannical people like that from taking them.
I think that we it's so hard for me to even engage in these conversations because I feel like I'm very in the option C camp where Barbara normally stands. It's like, it's the wrong question. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, I train jujitsu more than I should. Like, my body hates me for doing it most of the time. And so, like, but I'm only doing it because I love it and I want to be able to protect those that I love. It's like, if you come at me, you are going to be met with some serious force because that's what I do. And and my point is that the people that are using the rifles as a whole, guns as a whole, are all they're your neighbors, you know, your uncles, your friends. And as we stated before in this podcast, criminals don't give up their guns, and I don't think that patriots give up their guns. And so when you talk about we should outlaw these, I want you to think about, I am your neighbor and I have this rifle to protect you. If that crazy mob that I know it'll never happen, Alton, comes down our neighborhood road, I am going to be there to save you. The cops are not going to be there. It will be your neighbors that have these assault rifles. They're there to protect you and our children, and we all benefit from that powerful state because I promise you, you're living next to people that have lots of guns. So embrace that, and we're going to have bad apples. But if you take away if that's what you believe, that we should take away these rifles from citizens, you're taking away your own protection, in my opinion, especially if you've ever read history and look at government. So in that worst case scenario that history proves happens eventually, then go ahead and strip your protection away. Just give up your safety. That is your safety.
Well, just know as soon as you give them up, you're at the mercy of your government from then on out, especially if they're made illegal. So good luck, I guess, after that.
Who's been to the Berlin Wall on this podcast?
I have not.
Have you, John? Have you, Barbara?
No, I haven't.
I've been to the Berlin Wall. I've been to Eastern Germany and Poland and the Czech Republic. And literally they went to sleep and they woke up and there's a wall there. And now the military isn't letting them cross anymore. And that was their reality from what was it, 40 years or something?
Wow.
And well, whenever it was, right? 89, they tore down the wall, I think. Oh no, it'll never happen here. Well, what happened? They took their guns away and then that happened. So when people start preaching to me about you crazy, psycho, extremist, I'm like, look at history, y'all. My grandfather fought in that war. I lived with this man who fought in this war. It's not crazy. It just hasn't happened to us yet. So we can't be naive and think, that'll never happen. But anyway.
Well, here's a good question. Would you regret it if you didn't own a gun or let's say you decided to get rid of your guns? You're like, I want peace. You got rid of your guns and all of a sudden your neighborhood's now being patrolled by National Guard or whoever it might be. And you don't agree with what the politicians are pushing. Would you kind of regret it not having one at that point? I mean, I would. I don't ever want to be the victim in any, whether it be a mugger on the street, I'm going to have my 9mm, or whether it be ATF kicking in my door for something that is unconstitutional on their behalf. I'd rather have my guns too, just because, I mean, you have your rights and you say, oh, well, you're going to lose, you're going to get killed. Okay, maybe. If you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything.
But technically, by rule, you cannot fight back when it comes to a search and seizure. It's have
AFT, to. I think. Sorry.
Yeah, AFT.
Yeah. But
it's against the rules. Sure, of course, the government's going to say that.
Well, I mean, you'll have a lot of a headache to deal with if you do that right off the bat, just because. However, let me take y'all back because y'all are gun crazy enthusiasts. So if we just did, according to the way y'all are talking on here, and we had no gun laws, virtually just throw them out because Second Amendment, how do we keep bad guys from having access to weapons? Because now you're talking no background checks, no monitoring of any kind. I mean, like a silencer. I've got a
Jesus,
cousin,
man. Preach Jesus. That's how you do it.
That's the gospel.
Yeah,
I'm assuming that
there's a lot of people that don't believe in it.
You don't try to keep. I think that's what's bothering me about the whole conversation. And I don't have a problem with the getting rid of gun control, any of it. The problem to me is that there's still human beings involved. So how do you keep bad guys from getting what you don't? I think what Gary was saying before is that having the non-criminal element armed as well is a deterrent. So if everybody is armed, what is the fun of shooting up a school when you know you're going to die right away?
Exactly.
Right? I think
that's a great argument for it. I mean, and the real issue, I believe, is accountability individually. So people like to blame the gun. Why not blame the shooter and what they did instead of blaming the I mean, if guns were really the problem, 400 million assault rifles that currently exist in the US, there would be way more mass shootings if guns were the problem. Yeah. And that's just not the case. And you're not going to be able to do anything about criminals. I mean, we have laws in place for a reason. It's already illegal to kill people. It's illegal to rob people. It's illegal to assault people. All these things are legal. People are crappy by nature for the most. I mean, I wouldn't even say for the most part, but there's going to be that. Like the laws that happen in Australia, they did the gun confiscate, gun turn in or whatever they want to call it. Yeah, crime rate went down, but they also have the population of Los Angeles as a country. So gun laws there and gun laws in Sweden are going to work vastly differently than they are in the US, where we have so many more people. And so you can't apply those same rules or same tactics. I don't think.
I think I'm maxed out on my questions.
I'm afraid to ask more questions because I'll just keep going down the wormhole. But maybe Gary, you can just close with. I mean, look, me and Gary are friends here. We're not going to disagree on this. I don't need to grill him. I know my decision before he ever came on the podcast.
Well, why don't we do this?
Not going to change my mind.
Why don't we do this? Your president, ALTON, released a statement today. Why don't you tell us thoughts and feelings about
You're
that
triggering ALTON. Stop triggering. Now he's my president. Yeah, come on.
Yeah, he said no amendment is absolute, which completely triggered me when he's talking this in the context. He's talking about the Second Amendment. He's talking about gun control. And I'm just... I like to be optimistic and I like to be hopeful. I like to believe in that my children will live in a better place, that I will be part of leaving them a better place. Over the last year, we've seen so many civil liberties taken away. And I don't even want to say taken away because I feel like everyone just gave them up. And this middle ground that you mentioned, it's someone said talked about a dog on a leash that's a chain, and you just take out one link at a time, link at a time, and then you all of a sudden now there's no leash left, and then you're like, well, what happened? Well, that's how our liberties are taken away. And if you don't stand up and say, no, I won't wear a mask. No, I won't turn in my rifle. No, I mean, whatever, everyone, it's just a piece of cloth, or, oh, you can still keep your pistols and your hunting rifles. We just don't want you to have 50 round clips. Well, what is it next? Right.
It's a slippery slope, and like that for a reason. I mean, obviously a tyrannical government doesn't just become tyrannical. It requires your obedience to become tyrannical, and standing up to it's really the only way to stop that. And I think people remembering as Americans your rugged individuality and why guns are important to begin with, and we wouldn't be America today. I mean, I seen a meme the other day that says, baseball is America's pastime. Nah, shooting is. It always has been, always will be. And with that being said, that's why we're America. If our forefathers didn't have guns, we'd be speaking British right now, and we're not. And I love that. I love that we're not. And unless you have those guns, you can't maintain that level of independence. People think, oh, we got it so nice and soft and cushy. The suburban neighborhoods and lives that we live, that's an anomaly in the world. I've been to some bad countries, and I've seen how war-torn countries work. And this isn't normal. There's way more crappy places than there's good places. And I would like to be prepared for the crappy times when and if they do come. Yeah,
it's a lot like, we recently had Snowmageddon. We talked about it on the podcast about preparedness and, this is Texas. We're not going to have a huge snowstorm and knock out the power for a week. This isn't Boston or New York. Whoa, look, you found yourself not having water for 2 weeks, but you weren't expecting it. But if you were prepared, then it was fine. And I think that's the key. Gun is a trigger point for me, because once the guns are gone, you've lost all your opportunity to defend freedom. Politics is the way to do it the right way, the diplomatic way. And I believe that there's a lot of groups that are trying to do it. We're having a podcast here, hopefully to educate people with open minds. I'm raising my hand. I don't have an open mind on this one, so sorry. But when we've had this nation for this long, and how our nation was founded, and then we have a sitting president who stands up and and makes these statements that, yeah, it's just the Second Amendment. The only one that says shall not be infringed talks about a militia. Like, do we need to read the Second Amendment? We probably do. What does it say?
Oh, here.
Well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It's not like the other ones. Why did they write this? What was their history in 1789? What was fresh on their mind? I wonder. So if you want to be a free people, then free people are armed.
Yes. And I do have I'm not going to go into it because I know we're running out of time here, but I got a breakdown. Like the well-regulated part is a lot of people get caught up and they're like, oh, well, that's what the National Guard is. No, well-regulated was a term that was used in the early 1700s in a number of recorded instances. And what it really meant was, and I'll read it off here, was well-regulated was in common use long before 1789 and remained so for a century thereafter. It referred to property or something being in proper working order. Something that was well-regulated was calibrated correctly, functioning as expected. That's what well-regulated meant, not regulated by the government. And so people see that. And yes, I agree. If I could go back in time, I'd be like, hey, guys, you guys got to word this thing differently because people are going to be super confused and it's going to cause problems. That's what I would recommend to it. But it could be interpreted a number of different ways, but that's getting lost in the weeds. Why is it important? Why is independence important? You can boil it down to that. Screw guns. Why is it important to remain independent? So you can live your life how you see fit, freely and openly, as long as you're not harming other people intentionally or taking their stuff. That's the Second Amendment protects the First. Without the Second Amendment, there is no First Amendment because your government can tell you what you can and can't say after that at the point of a gun. So without that Second Amendment, you don't have the First Amendment.
Reach.
Well, now that I've let y'all become best friends on this show, I'm going to have to break up the party. But Gary, it was really great to have you on here and have this conversation. Obviously, this conversation is going to continue well beyond you being on this show and the listeners chiming in and social media and everything. How can they follow you, be in touch with you, maybe challenge you on your gun rights? I welcome as many people on my social media as want to debate me on things. I don't post things to be necessarily argumentative, but I want it to be thought provoking. And I do want to hear your argument. Like that meme of Steven Crowder is like, prove me wrong. That's kind of what I'm at. Because the hills that I'm willing to die on, I have yet to have anybody really challenge me on my end beliefs. And I'm welcome to it. But if they want to follow me, I'm at Gary Bear 86. It's a nickname that stuck with me before the army, into the army. So Gare Bear, it's stupid. But my website, Gary-Phipps.com. That's GARY-PHIPPS.com. I got random shit on there. I got me talking about me and my wife knowing each other since we were 4, my army days, what I do professionally. I write some articles. I really don't know what I'm doing. That's the crazy part. What I like to do is talk to people like you because I like to convey the importance of things like the Second Amendment and preparedness and individuality and things like that. Because I feel like it's a subject that's not talked about as much anymore. And I think it should be. I think how we need to title this episode when it airs is should civilians own assault rifles -Gare Bear?
Yeah.
I think that's going to do it for us. I think that's how Google search engines are going to find us.
Awesome. Well, no, I appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And we will catch you around. Make sure you check him out on our extra segment. And we are actually going to continue on with this conversation. So, Gary, take care.
See you guys.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Bye, Gary Bear.
Bye.
All right.
Pew, pew. It was on my list. I needed to say it. That was the last one on the list, by the way.
It's a good day then. Made it to the end.
I was trying to figure out how to make a pun with Gare Bear and Bear Arms, but I couldn't think fast enough.
Wrong kind of joke.
Okay, so we heard what he had to say, which is basically the same thing as ALTON has always been saying.
See, there are other crazy people out there just like me sitting in garages all over the world.
There are. Here's the thing I really struggle with is, me and you both go to church together, and it just seems like, yeah, some of the thoughts of how to make things mesh well, right? Both sides coming together where there's a middle ground. It honestly seems like both sides are stubborn as hell and no one wants to agree to anything. Because when I talk to you and Gary, it seems like y'all said, right? Second Amendment, period. I should be able to own what I want, when I want, how I want, and do what I want, as long as I'm not breaking other laws. Whereas the other side's like, no, we need more restrictions. We need to eliminate guns, blah, blah, whatever. There's got to be a middle ground for everybody to be happy, though. Doesn't there?
I'm calling it. I don't think so. I think that actually that whole middle ground is how we got here. This idea that extremes are bad, that to say if something is bad, it means that something is good. I feel like we live so often in this neutral, don't declare anything to be good, bad, legal, illegal, that we end up being nothing. And that kind of complacency is how the kind of tyranny that's happening in the United States, that's how it happens. It's how it's always happened throughout history. Because I'm with you. I mean, read it. It's there. I feel like today was the wrong question. I don't think there's a middle ground because I think we're talking about the wrong question.
It's additional. There's so much that goes into this topic. So sorry, go ahead, Alan.
No, I don't mean you. I mean like the country is talking about the wrong question is what I meant, not you in particular.
Here's where I can get on board. Bunch of people got shot and killed in a massacre, and it's terrible. Amen. I'm right there with you. Terrible. Now we go, this hurt so bad. I want to control that hurt and that pain and that terror, and I'm going to do something about it because I don't want that to happen again. And now we start taking action, right? Because there's got to be a way. There's got to be a way. Get rid of the gun. The gun is bad. Okay. Because
are you referring to the Denver shooting just recently?
It doesn't matter. Like any bad thing, right? 9/11, bad. Can't have that happen again. Go to war because that'll teach them, and maybe it will, right? My grandfather got cancer and it took his life. Bad, right? I've gone on walks to raise money to cure cancer, right? And I tell Heather, and you're going to find this offensive if you're listening, probably, I'm like, this is so stupid. We're literally walking. Like, this has nothing to do with cancer. We just want to feel like we're doing something against something that is just terrible. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't do cancer research and all of that stuff. I'm making the point that sometimes bad things happen and that bothers us, and we want to have an effect on it. And so in the gun conversation, it's like bad things happen. Kids got shot at school, whatever. Let's take action and ban all these bad guns. Okay. I hear what you're saying, that I don't want the bad things to happen either. And then we just differ in the philosophy, right? I'm like, give every teacher a gun. And then someone else is like, no, make it a law that no guns can go in school. And so we both want the same thing. I believe, generally all the sane people want safety, peace, no bloodshed, certainly don't want children dying. We all want that. I think that we can all agree with that. And I have a lot of family that's like, Alton, you and your crazy guns, it's bad. And it's like, yeah, but once you release the guns, that's like this point of no return. And that is what I guess I'm at. I'm like, yeah, I get that there's some bad things happening and that there was a gun involved, but it's not nearly as bad as what would happen is if, you could wave a magic wand and all of the civilian citizen AR-15 disappeared. And then you can have anybody in office do whatever they want. And you better not ask any questions.
So key takeaways for the actual question of should civilians own assault rifles? What would you say those key takeaways are?
That's hard to kind of boil down.
Mm-hmm. So you've made up your mind and you don't have any key points to go over, huh?
Me?
Either of you.
Oh, well, I think the key points, though, are kind of what Alton has been saying, that I think we need to always be looking at the why. Why do crimes happen? Because people are involved. It's not. Now, I mean, to be fair, at the beginning of this conversation today, I still don't totally understand why assault rifles are the big conversation that they are. I mean, not like they should all be banned. I don't think they should be banned. I don't really understand why that's the priority gun to have, but I'm not a gun owner. So I'm going to admit ignorance in this. Like, I don't know. I sort of felt the same way when the state of Washington was debating about whether to make marijuana legal. Like, part of me wants to be like, I'm not sure why we care, like, enough to regulate this, right? So yeah, I guess, I mean, that's probably the key takeaway is you got to be honest about the why and what are you trying to do? I think Alton is right that there is a desire for control after we have trauma. We want to feel like we have a grip on something. And I think that the Constitution is written in such a way that it protects both sides of that grief. And I don't think it's wise for either side to completely cave, quite frankly, because I think that each side is looking at a different angle of justice. And I think that's part of why this American experiment works, is that we have both.
Yeah.
Is that a takeaway? I guess that wasn't bullet points, wasn't it? Oh.
I mean, I just say it's easy to feel now, right? Think about now. But if you are looking at this past year, I mean, gun ownership is up through the roof this year. Why? Because everybody's rioting and protesting, and any normal person who is unable to defend themselves is thinking, I think I'd like to be able to defend myself. How could I do that? Am I going to call the police? No, because there's 1,000 people out there. Oh, I should at least go buy a gun. And that's what they've gone out and done. So that tells me that there's all the crazies like me. Yes, check, noted. Psycho dads that just want to protect their family should something bad happen. And then there's all these other people who have never considered it. And now they're really like, oh, just in case. And so let's think about this as insurance. Do we want to get rid of our insurance policy for the sake of our entire nation? When you zoom out and look at history, I hate to say it, but you've got to be a fool to believe that some of these atrocities that have happened before and are continued, they're still happening now, atrocities across the world. But those atrocities, none of them are happening where people are owned or are armed, right? Like, they're just not happening. If the slaves in our country had owned firearms, would they have still been slaves?
Got to read the history on that one. It's pretty interesting. It didn't work when they rose up against it. You know what? It doesn't matter. We should do the deciding factor. But yeah, that is a thing. I was reading to my kids in history the other day, actually, when the slaves rose up and were armed.
It doesn't matter. We're going to do the deciding factor.
It wasn't pretty. Okay.
All right, let's do this.
Now it's time for our deciding factor.
Okay, guys. So I'm going to sum it up and actually put it together. So not just assault rifles. Let's do the semi-automatic and fully automatic assault rifles, right? So should civilians own either assault rifle? I would actually prefer someone to have an automatic because I think they have a bigger chance of missing me when they just fully unload, right? So I'm okay with that. Go with that. I do think everyone really should have the right to own an assault rifle. Pure and simple, they need to be able to defend their friends, their family, their neighbors. It's just the way it's written in. I don't think I'm the extreme, like Alton and Gary are. I honestly think there's still some kind of middle ground, but at the same time, I do see their point where it's it was written one way. We've tried it. It's not gotten better. So why would we take it any further? So I get it. So maybe, like y'all have said, it's not the right question. And I'm going to take it back to John Huber. If you've listened to a podcast with him, he actually works in mental health awareness. I think something like that is really the question we need to answer. Leave the guns alone. Focus on the mental health in our country. Fix it, and you might have the solution you need to avoid lives being lost.
You're so optimistic. It's adorable. I don't even know what to make out of that.
Church.
Well, yeah, I guess I'm saying like, okay, I'm fine with assault rifles. I couldn't pick one out of a lineup, honestly. Sorry about that. But I think that anything that infringes upon liberties is a pretty bad idea. I think that it's totally fine to argue that I would use the example of fire alarms and fire extinguishers.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? But you shouldn't be required by your government to own a fire extinguisher. I'd like the right to be an idiot, I guess. So it's sort of what I'm saying. But I also don't think that mental illness, that mental health is the solution. There's a fundamental problem that doesn't get fixed by legislation, and it doesn't get fixed by doctors. The human heart is the problem. So whether we make guns illegal, well, guess what? People are still going to use them. Or whether we make no gun control laws whatsoever, people are going to die either way. I think that I gotta kind of get over that. We're all going to die eventually.
COVID's going to get you.
Exactly, right? Come on, look at the statistics. Like 0.111% of people die. So I'm fine with Americans having access to military weapons. I think there will still be disasters one way or the other because people are involved.
And option C, you're going to join a boogaloo.
Well, now that I know what it is, I really
she's got the tats. I mean,
did think that it was that he was talking about a clothing brand, so that's embarrassing.
I thought it was like a hut. That's what I thought it was, a boogaloo.
Okay, so my bladder's full. I'm going to have to go here. This is my deal. If you're in the camp of, we got to get these dangerous weapons of war off our street, I just want to ask, when was the last time that you were a victim of violence? You specifically, or when was the last time that you legitimately were in fear for your life? If that hasn't happened to you, then, okay, maybe you're not the best person to be, maybe you're not qualified to be talking about this. But imagine that you were a victim of that, or, the mob's coming down the street, you're in Nazi Germany, someone breaks into your house at night, and you're literally forced to need this, right? Because there are a lot of people that we can look at that this has had to happen from before. And if that was you and you were in that scenario, don't you think that an AR-15 or whatever would help you in that situation? Certainly, to me, there's not much of an argument. You might say, well, I'm not trained or whatever. Well, I'm saying I want you to have the opportunity to defend yourself. And there's nothing stopping you from, training or learning how to use it. So if that's the case, should citizens have them? And I think, yes, you shouldn't take them away from your neighbors who are willing to be ready to defend you in that crazy scenario. Like, I remember asking my neighbor, I'm like, hey, do you have an alarm system on your house? I was thinking about it. And he's like, nah, man, I got guns. I don't need an alarm system. So it just made me laugh. But when we had Snowmageddon, I was taking like wood to people. I was taking water to people. I was doing those things. When it reached the point where someone was unable to take care of themselves, I was helping. I was serving them in whatever that capacity was. In this case, it was like, well, I have water, I'm taking it to you, or you need more wood for your stove, I'll take it to you. I was doing that. And in my own head, those are the people who are unwilling to relinquish their firearms because they're the ones who are prepared to defend your rights if that requirement ever came about. So if you're all about, taking the weapons of war off the street, I think that you're, should that need ever arise, you would have been a part of, taking away everyone's freedom, which I'm vehemently opposed to. I love dangerous freedom. Yes, every person should have one if you want it. If not, that's cool too.
Just live next door to Alton.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, live next door to me. It's all good.
Yeah, then you don't need to worry about it. Yeah, I think this was good. I think there's even several spinoffs off to this episode. So I think you're gonna have to stick by and watch more if this actually interested you. Make sure to share your comments. What are your thoughts? Are Alton and Gary just too extreme? Did Barb not give enough? Or should I just shut the heck up? Either way, we want to know. Wait, what?
Those are our options?
There's more. You just have to type it. I don't care.
All right.
All right. So, guys, make sure you check us out on our extra segment. We appreciate you following us, and we look forward to our next episode. Guys, say bye.
Bye.
Later, dudes.
This has been another episode of The Deciding Factor, giving you food for thought on real life issues. Be sure to click, like, and subscribe to this podcast, as well as all your big social media outlets, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Don't forget to check out our website at thedecidingfactorpodcast.com and give us comments and feedback. Until next time, stay safe and remember to keep an open mind.